what's the word? There was a lot of really esteemed people on the panel, and then there was me.
All right, well, let me do this again
Okay.
because I screwed up.
Would you? Oh, you start over.
Yeah, I just turned it off instead of turning it on. So, you know what? It's early Saturday morning. I should be drinking coffee.
At least you realize now.
I did. You know what?
It's okay. We just need a practice run.
I'll say it again. Well, we do that all the time. I'm just screwed up. So, what can I say?
Yeah.
Welcome to the Winemaker, Sam Couture, Bart Hansen. No, look, Bart is on his way. You're not Bart. You're Brian Casey.
Wait, take 3.
Devyani Gupta, Walla Walla. Welcome. Valdemar Estates.
That's a can.
Recording here on a Saturday morning, which is
Yeah.
certainly out of all of our comfort zones.
A little earlier
John usually
than
goes
normal.
on the radio on Saturdays, but you wait till the afternoon for that.
Yeah, I'm going to go play rock and roll and blues, but that's not until 1 o'clock. So,
But this is sort of a
glad I noticed
continuation of our Hospice de Rhone series of
that.
shows.
Yeah, well, update everybody on Hospice de Rhone.
So, well, you know, we'll have the
introduce
Hospice de Rhone.
Devyani again.
And we'll introduce Devyani.
Devyani Isabel Gupta. Hi.
Isabel Gupta from Valdemar Estates.
Yes.
And we're going to dig in deep on Valdemar Estate. You know, if Hospice de Rhone was one of the sort of events that it sort of cement Walla Walla in the international world, you know, wine scene. You know, the first one maybe is Cayuse's early success. Valdemar Estates, you know, the Valdemar family searching the world over or searching the West Coast over anyway, and landing on Walla Walla was another one of those Walla Walla arrives on global wine scene moments. So we talk about a little bit about Valdemar Estate, and we'll get into your background. This is her first trip to Sonoma, which is, you know, for us, like Sonoma-centric people or Sonoma-Napa-centric people, like, how do you be in wine and not? So we're going to find out how you made that happen. But talk about Valdemar a second, because it's a cool story.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. It was a really big moment for Washington wine. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, so for me, I've been in Walla Walla for 13 years. And so seeing the Valdemar family, they're a fifth-generation winemaking family from Rioja, Spain, and they've been making wine since 1889, which is actually coincidentally the same year that Washington was founded as a state. So Jesus studied abroad at the University of Washington, and that's how he was exposed to the Pacific Northwest. But really, it is true. They searched the West Coast. They did actually look at some other countries outside of the U.S., and they just fell in love with Walla Walla, Washington. I think if Jesus were here, he would say, you know, it was definitely half the wine quality, but the other half was the quality of the wine community. We're really just a supremely welcoming community out there. I feel like there are, from the pioneers who first started, such as like Gary Figgins in 1979. You know, his quote is, "Here in Walla Walla, we push the guy ahead of us while pulling the guy behind us." And I think that that's something that here we are like 40 years later, and that's still very, very true. So the family saw that right away, and on their second visit to the valley, within 30 minutes of setting foot on the property that's now where our winery is, they were signing a pre-contract. So they were all in on Walla Walla. Since then, I think so had been 2017, started construction 2018. I joined as a second employee in 2019. We opened our doors in April 2019 and had a soft opening of 400 people.
Okay.
There's 400 of our closest friends.
Not so soft.
I think we had
It's a little
prepared-
rough.
Yeah, we were like, 100 people tops. Like,
Yeah.
no one's going to know about this. And it's
Yeah.
like 400 people later kind of went to war that day. But we got it done, and I think it just also showed how excited people were to see such a big international venture put down roots in Walla Walla. Since then, I think we've also had some other big moves. So Kendall Jackson has their Jet project, which is focused on Mill Creek. It's a special kind of cooler corridor in the foothills of the Blue Mountain. Starts at about 1,100 foot elevation and taps out around 1,800. So I'm not sure where their Skysail Vineyard. I think that's about 1,400 feet, but it's a partnership also with Abeja. So Abeja has half and Kendall Jackson has the other half. But seeing outside players also invest in Walla Walla has kind of been... has especially picked up in the last 5 years, and it's just been kind kind of all culminating into then hosting Hospice de Rhone. I think so many people came to that event, and it was amazing to be pouring and looking out in a room for like the rocks tasting. Easily 50% of those people stated that they had never been to Walla Walla before. Yeah. So, and at least 40% of that room were all industry and producers. So, like, how cool is that? To have friends in the wine community from around the world come to a place they've never been before, and just taste and learn. So
yeah, it was rad.
So how big is the industry up in Washington? How big is it? I know Walla Walla, and I know Walla.
That's a great question because one of Devyani's many lines on her resume is you were part of the Washington Wine Commission, on the board, something like that. So all of your Washington wine questions, John, we can make up answers. She'll know the actual answer.
Yeah. Yes, I'm on the board for the Washington State Wine Commission. We're focused on messaging Washington wine to the world.
And so, how big is the industry up there?
It's pretty big. So, I believe we are the second largest wine producing state. So it goes California, then us. We did surpass Oregon in the last few years, in I think the last decade. I think last I checked, we had just under 1,000 wineries. Of course, there are a couple players that make up maybe half of the total gallons produced in Washington State, but for the most part, it's really, I think what people don't know is that we have almost 1,000 producers. You might know of a few that produce, half of the production, but everybody else is then usually sitting in maybe the 2,000 to 20,000 case size. So there's a ton of small producers. There's a lot of hand selling, and I think there's an art to having a great DTC program. But the tough part is it doesn't leave your tasting room, right? So unless people go and message your wine, there's so many amazing 2,000 case wineries that you'll probably never hear about.
Right. We understand that. That's
and that elephant in the room, would that be Chateau Saint Michel?
Yeah, but also then there's Four Feathers Wine Estates, Columbia Winery, Hogue. Right. So basically you can put, like 60% at least of Washington Wine's production in the hands of 5 brands. Yeah. It's a little freaky.
Cool.
How do you guys...
On the other hand, they're good.
That's not unlike any other wine growing area, though.
I mean, I wonder if, we broke it. It's obviously bigger numbers and bigger amount of wineries, but you probably say the same thing about California, right?
Right.
They maybe have more brands under those umbrellas, but there's, Gallo, Constellation, a couple others.
Wine Group.
Yeah.
Treasury.
Right.
Yeah.
Treasury.
Yep.
Yeah. And those guys are also now starting to sort of enter into the Washington and the Walla Walla fray, right?
Yeah, that's another big change, is just the diversification of corporate wineries moving to Washington State or adding a Washington State brand to their portfolio. I think that's something that 10 years ago we didn't have much of. And no, I agree. It's not really unlike too many other regions. I think more the stratification, though, is it looks a little extreme at this time. I bet 10 years from now, it will look almost more similar to what you're describing in California. And maybe the one exception is probably the Oregon wine industry. I think that's an interesting one where there's a lot of, there's so many producers operating in that 10 to 20,000 case level and successfully. So it's a very different ecosystem in Oregon.
Well, you talk about your background a little bit. You said you grew up in Portland. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that was on take 1 or take 2. Was that take 1? Was it take 2? But how did you?
Been one of those mornings?
Yeah.
I didn't miss much.
Welcome to the party, Bart. Or Brian Casey.
For you. The machine was waiting for you. How did you get into wine? Did you grow up in a wine household? Was there wine on your table and growing up, or what? How did that happen?
Yeah, shout out to Ken at QFC in Portland. But basically, my dad is the one who introduced me to wine at a young age. I thought he would have some amazing stories. That was a tangent, but my dad he still is actually in corporate tech, and he was an engineer at Intel for almost 30 years. And he led projects and teams, and so he'd have to entertain clients. And now he's the CEO of Cascade Systems Technology, which I think what he's doing there is super cool. Basically, it's more homegrown, like actually building and processing and selling and distributing chips like all and processors like here domestically. So I think what he's trying to do is...
Thank you.
Yeah.
Something we all sort of learned during the pandemic, right? That was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Somebody's doing it. Thank you.
Absolutely. No, and so bringing that work domestically and also, being all one-stop shop. So I'm really proud of him for kind of taking everything he learned at Intel and then running this company so efficiently and doing everything in a homegrown grassroots approach. But so my dad, all right, I asked him one day, I was like, how did you get into wine? And I expected some amazing story of like, I was in... I stopped for a couple of days in Bordeaux after my business trip, and I had this amazing red wine on the sunset and looking over a hilltop, and that's when I knew I loved wine. And no, he just looked at me and he was like, it was to survive corporate tech.
That's a pretty good answer.
He was like, I was having to take, I was like, wow. I mean, he said that, he was quickly promoted because he's an engineer who can talk to people. So he was quickly promoted to...
Sounds like he has a personality also.
Oh, my dad's the best. He actually had to represent us for a trade show that neither Jesus or I could go to in Portland. And we're like, who could we send that could like really fill in for us, who knows the brand and can talk to people? And we're like, oh my God, my dad.
And Dad.
Hey, Pop.
Send in the man.
He cleaned house. It was
He
amazing.
killed it,
Yeah.
of course.
I think he placed more than our distributors have all year in that one trade event. Thank God. But he
Hire him.
yeah.
Sounds like he's busy though.
Yeah, but so that's how he got into wine, was basically I had to start taking clients out, and he was looking at wine lists. He's like, I'm going to embarrass myself. I need to know wine if I'm going to be good at this element of my job. Then it turned into a passion, and he was always bugging, our local QFC had the reserve room, right? So he's always bothering Ken.
What is it? A QFC is like the local store?
Yeah, it's,
Okay.
I know. I thought it was Quebec fried chicken.
Oh, Brian,
It's like,
that's
it's
a
an
good one.
offshoot of KFC? What the hell is that?
Wrong side of Canada.
That'd be Tim Hortons.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess it's quality foods market, but it's basically I'd say it's a regional chain of kind of I don't know how to describe it. It's not Whole Foods in that it doesn't take your whole paycheck, but it's similar in terms of quality.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like usually like very regionally focused, local produce, local meats. And it was right by our house, and so he had, Ken was the wine guy there, and he would basically put together little 6-bottle packs for my dad to try. And so over the years, he'd have, I just would start bothering him as a small kid and be like, I want to smell that. Can I taste it? And he's like, no. And then I kept harassing him enough where he's like, fine, if you can smell this and say, you describe 3 things of how this wine smells, and I feel like those are true, you can earn 1 sip. So I started earning my sips, and but wine's kind of on the table. It's in a glass. Even though we'd go to Willamette Valley, growing up in Portland, wine feels like this kind of way out there thing. And so fast forward to 2011, I moved to Walla Walla to go to Whitman College on a scholarship.
That's what I was wondering, is if you
Yeah.
went to Whitman. Okay.
Yeah, so I had a scholarship, and I knew that Whitman was just a fantastic school, and so I was like, I don't know anything about Walla Walla, but I'm going. So arrived there, and I just, you look around and you can't like not see wine. You see the vineyards, you see people like moving barrels on a truck and trailer, and I just totally found myself rubbernecking left and right, wanting to go see what all that's about. So as soon as I turned 21, I went to go work in a tasting room. Then that was pretty much the Alice in Wonderland moment. I was at Amavi in Pepperbridge, and you just start learning more and more about what goes into a wine and why it tastes this way, and I was completely hooked. And so at that point, I had wanted to go into research and kind of had like the next 8 years planned out, but I absolutely fell in love with the work that goes into wine.
What kind of research? What?
So it's hard because I don't want to say like, I don't want to dog on it, because it was amazing research. So it was early identification intervention for children with autism. Mm-hmm. So I did take a job in that field when I graduated, and I was like, okay. At that point, I'd met people where wine was maybe their second or third career. And I thought, okay, well, someday we'll go make wine. And that dream was very much alive, but I figured I kind of owed it to the last 4 years of servitude in my education and student loans and all this to like go pursue that route. And within 6 months, I knew that I just didn't love it as much as wine. Mm. So, and I just missed being in Walla Walla. At that point, I was in Seattle. I just missed wine, missed being with people talking about wine, and had things pretty clear. So finished my contract there and withdrew my apps from grad school and applied to our local community college, which has a technical wine trade program.
Great little wine school in the Walla Walla Community College, right?
It's hard to find, actually, if you are tasting around Walla Walla and you ask, it's hard to find places that don't have a winemaker or someone on their winemaking team from that program.
Yeah, it's interesting. Whitman has shown up in my son's search of colleges for what he's interested in pursuing, but it may be a little too small.
It is a bit of a
pretty small
fishbowl.
school, yeah.
1,600 kids, I think.
Yeah.
It's,
Oh, wow.
it's a lot. Yeah. But at the same time, it was an incredible education. I mean, I remember, especially once you get into your third and fourth year and your 400 level classes, I mean, you had seminars of 20 students or less, you know, speaking at a very high level with your peers and your professor. I mean, I don't think that's very easy to find.
Right.
That just kind of that level of engagement. So it was an amazing school, and I think that also you had to give presentations in every single class, even your chemistry class. You had to get up and speak in front of your peers, and I think that has definitely served me well.
Yeah, for sure.
It's because that's a tough skill.
Yeah.
And
It's an invaluable skill.
And it's scariest to talk to your peers, I think. Like to get in front of your peers and potentially embarrass yourself versus like a room of 400 people you don't know.
Right.
Yeah. But you were actively, though, asking questions when you were working in the tasting room, right? You like already had your eyes set on moving into the cellar or out in the vineyard.
I think once I started to see the people that behind wine, and then also start to build the connections of what you can do in those roles. Like, what does it mean to work on a vineyard management team? What does it mean to, be a cellar tech, cellar master, enologist, winemaker, assistant winemaker? It just started to piece together kind of the work that goes into it. I think that's ultimately, that's very much what I fell in love with, was just kind of the way that the work, you have to focus on what you're doing. When you're shoot thinning, you can't be thinking about something else. You need to be looking at the task at hand. When you're racking, it's very much you're 100% dedicated and present to the wine. So there's also a bit of a meditative element. I think with research, leaned into my obsessive side.
Yeah.
And I think with wine, there's a really humbling element of like, you can ask all the questions. You could, you could have all the success. You could ask all the questions, and you'll never ever reach a point where you're like, I figured this out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, that's the whole end game of research, is figure it out and write a paper on it.
But what was your goal did you want to work out in the vineyards, or did you want to make wine?
Both.
So you just wanted to learn everything.
Yeah. So that's why I knew also is that I really wanted to be in the vineyards and in the winery. And it's a little hard to find positions like that. I think, more finding estate wineries that have their own vineyard management team. That's tricky. So just looking at the size of wineries in Walla Walla, a lot of us work with vineyard management like FLCs, so farm labor contractors. And so for me, the first few years being in the industry on the production side, I just did both. So I would work busy season for a farm labor contractor company, North Slope Management, Sadie Jury, dear friend of mine now, but also just kick-ass grower.
The Vit Nerd on Instagram. Sadie's great. I had dinner with her when I was up there in 2022 also.
The Vit Nerd. It's true. I mean, she grows, she farms grapes for, some of the top wineries in Walla Walla. So like LaCole's Ferguson Vineyard. At the time when I was working with her, she also had Doublebacks McQueen and Bob Healy. So there's...
and that whole Seven Hills Vineyard, which is the one, like when you're standing in Delmas and you look south up that hill with all the above the... What I guess, I don't know if there's a railroad there or something. Up on that hill, that's the Seven Hills Vineyard where... And it's huge.
Yeah. So worked busy season in the vineyard, and then pretty much on Labor Day make the switch to the cellar, and it was the best experience in the sense. Cellar, I worked for Figgins Family Wine Estates. That's Figgins, Toyle, Leonetti, and just incredible family to work for.
Is I forget Leonetti's first name?
So there's Gary, the father.
Yeah, and then, Gary. Is he still around?
Gary Figgins. Yeah. Oh, yeah. But he's starting to retire, which, like, good for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he and Nancy are they're still very much involved, but they also are taking some time to actually enjoy their home in Hawaii. So they've earned it. Those guys are, when they started, Nancy was, her day job was cleaning houses, and then she would pack out all the wine club shipments. And Gary, I believe he worked at the cannery. And so it was just, both of them were just grinding and working, and he's a machinist. So they really built that brand from the ground up with their, and they're still,
Literally.
they've been so involved. Yeah,
It's safe to say that he was one of the first, like, really premium and notable Washington wines, right?
Absolutely. I think what kind of put, so they were the first, and the second was Woodward Canyon. Third winery was La Colle. So that's 1979 to 1983. Three very amazing brands. And then I think by 2000, just over 10 wineries. There's a little bit of a boom in the beginning of the 2000s, and then 2008 knocked that back a bit. Then really the most recent wave has been 2012, 2016, just tons, going from this boom of maybe 50-something brands to then like over 100 brands.
It seems like every single one of them has a tasting room in downtown Walla Walla. There's so many.
Yeah.
We found that highly entertaining because we're walking downtown and we see all the tasting rooms, and there's a bit of a pushback, I think, on the Sonoma Square not to have a bunch of tasting rooms, but we realized that wasn't the case. In Walla Walla,
it can be tough. It's like a tough real estate. I think it has worked for a while, and especially if you're a smaller winery, just to have that kind of primo location. But it's tough because I do think that how we sell wine now has changed, especially post-pandemic. Mm-hmm. And so some of those tasting room spots, there's just not a lot of like seating. There's not a lot of space. It's just a tremendous amount of kind of overhead to basically kind of not necessarily have as, you have people maybe coming in for a quick stop. Like the belly of the bar tasting model is not really a thing anymore.
Yeah, how much money can you make with a small place as opposed to some place they can go visit?
And the rents here are
square foot.
insane.
Yeah.
I'm sure they are in Walla Walla also.
Yeah, I think for now we still have some pretty agreeable rents, but I mean that's always changing. Oh, the one thing I do want to mention. So Gary is the father, but then Chris Figgins is the son. He's been in charge of winemaking since really 2008.
Okay.
Yeah, 2008. And so then he also started Figgins, which is a single estate Bordeaux blend. So it's just the Figgins vineyard up in Mill Creek. And it's one brand just based off of that. And then he's also started Toil, Oregon, which is looking at Willamette Valley Pinot, Chardonnay, and Rosé. And, amazing wines.
Cool.
Do you guys have a little bit of mixed feelings when someone like Jackson family or comes into town and sets up shop?
Comes into town
I didn't buy anything. The only thing I bought in Walla Walla was a little bit of wine and a whole lot of records at Hot Poop. So I'm not buying anything up.
I'm so glad you went to Hot Poop.
That's my favorite store. It might be my favorite store on the planet, to be honest.
It has been there.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's been there since I moved in 2011. It's been there forever.
50 years.
Yeah.
50 years for that. Old shout out Jim McQuinn. He's awesome. A little bit of a hoarder.
What'd you buy?
For sure. I don't even know. You just like go into like some other brain state of just like randomly running through, picking things out. Actually, I think my prize of all the things that I bought on this most recent visit was an Elizabeth Cotten record. Elizabeth Cotten, sort of like classic blues guitarist, from like the 20s and 30s. I'm blanking right now on sort of the songs that she sang and wrote, but
songs
things
that the Grateful Dead covered.
But basically, it's a bunch of songs the Grateful Dead covered. Yeah, totally. Like going down the road feeling bad or something. It's something like it's like things that are sort of as ubiquitous as that. Elizabeth Cotten, yeah, definitely. And this like great sort of. She's like this. When she was famous and getting recorded, she was like an old lady. This old black lady, like kind of gravelly voice.
Big Mama Thornton.
Yeah, sort of in that
Coco Taylor.
In that same vein. Yeah, Elizabeth Cotten. Look her up. I got a great Elizabeth Cotten record. It's one of the records that doesn't make it into the general population in the tasting acid. Stays over in the office.
So anyway, back to Brian's question.
We could talk about Hot Poop forever.
Yeah. I distracted you. Sorry.
I
don't know if you guys, if there's a part of you that's happy that it's a thriving industry, but then kind of like you feel maybe when people with money are coming that the smaller guys are getting pushed out a little bit. I mean, something that, kind of happened with the cannabis industry once it was legalized is like then, the people with the money start to control the laws that are being passed and maybe making more wine than you would want them to and driving prices down, or they're able to spend more money than most people.
I think for now, especially, so my knee-jerk reaction when I heard about Kendall Jackson coming to town was just all positive. Like, I was super excited to hear it because more it's to have a brand of that caliber and with their full suite of brands to send also their winemaking team from Cardinal to make the wines for Jet. I mean, that is such a great testament to, I think, the work that we've been doing over the last 40 years as a valley to now attract that kind of attention, but also for the perspective of the small guys. I mean, I don't mean to be crass, but it's like, man, that just sealed your retirement plan. Like if you have vineyard, like that's the price, that's the sound of the price going up, right?
Right.
So, for those that have been holding on to land, for those that are small, their brand just basically accrued value overnight. So when you see moves like that, I think it's good for all of us. I think another old school quote is, the rising tide floats all boats. So I think that's very much our mentality. This is really good for everybody's business. And I think also at a point that we're not saturated. I think we have so many small brands. To give you an idea, a large winery seat on the Walla Walla Wine Alliance board, and sorry, Liz, if I get this wrong, is 3,500 cases. So you're officially a large winery if you make 3,500 cases.
Wow.
Yeah, here we call that micro winery.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, literally, I think that's the term for it here.
Which I think they're going to have to revisit because technically we have a small winery seat and we make 5,000 cases. But at the time that Jesus joined the board, we were doing 2,500 cases. So I think that it's something I think also we have to kind of look within and say, okay, is that actually still true? But there are so many small brands under 3,000 cases in Walla Walla that there's a lot of room for all of us to grow and continue to sell wine. And I think also larger brands, I know for us, Valdemar family has global distribution for their Rioja wines. We're very much the younger little sister. I mean, they do over 100,000 cases in Rioja. We do 5 here. But it means that like a few cases of Valdemar Estates get to piggyback on orders to, Quebec, to BC, to Sweden, to UK. And so there's also this ability to kind of pool resources. And, Le Cole is a good example. They do that all the time. But basically getting the Walla Walla name out there in the world, and all the way in Japan, China. Yeah. And they do an amazing job of that. Their wines are fantastic. They're great ambassadors for us.
Do you get to go to Spain?
Yeah, I went in 2022.
And go hang out at the winery and see what they're doing?
And get COVID with the winemaker.
Oh, God.
Oh.
So it was so funny. Antonio and I had made it the whole time, the whole pandemic without getting COVID. And we go, and of course, there's a Calle Laurel in Logroño, which is kind of the main tapas street where everyone goes and hangs out. So yeah, we got some pinchos, some copas, and some COVID. And Jesus was like, I can't believe my winemakers were like partying in Logroño, got sick on like day 4. But
did you have to stay there and not fly home for a little while?
Yeah, I had to basically just kind of quarantine. But honestly, like I just masked up and I figured, okay, these state vineyards, like I'm outside, I'm by myself. So I just was like, I was sick, but I wasn't that sick. And so I just masked up and went through all the vineyards. And I was like, I'm not missing this. I flew away across the world to come see these vineyards. So.
And can people buy those Spanish wines if they're in Walla Walla?
Yes, yeah. We carry not everything, but I'd say most of everything we do have available in our tasting room. But really, it's the vineyard designate wines that we carry that I'm really excited about. Like there's 100% Garnacha from Gargantia. There's a Maturana. There's some of the special edition blends. Those always make it to our tasting room. So it's there's a lot of like different undiscovered sides of Rioja that maybe people don't know about.
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Can we talk about this wine a little bit, because we spent obviously this last trip up there. It was all about Rhones. Rhone, Roussan and Marsanne and Viognier were the white wines we were drinking. Yeah.
I don't even think we cracked the white burgundies that we brought.
No, I think we sent them back home. Maybe one.
Should have called me.
Yes,
Help you liquidate.
anytime. We rented a house that had a giant wine fridge, and we filled it up, and then we emptied it.
Excellent. That's the way to do it.
But there's something like almost Roussan-like here. There's like a green apple thing happening, so just talk about Chardonnay a little bit. Sorry, I buried the lead there. It's Chardonnay. It's not a Rhone, but it has some. Maybe the green apple was sort of what jumped out at me first. Is that unique to this vineyard site or to the region? Talk about Chardonnay there, and then maybe talk about how you made this wine a little bit.
Yeah, so this is 2022 De Brule Vineyard Chardonnay from the Yakima Valley. 2022 for us was actually kind of the opposite of what was going on here. So I know you guys had a heat wave right before harvest, right? 2022 is actually our coolest, wettest, longest vintage in over 10 years. So we were harvesting this about, to give you an idea, almost a month later.
And I know one of the crazy things about growing grapes up there is that basically, once the calendar turns to October, you could freeze at any moment, right?
Yes.
So what is a month late? What is the normal time and when?
Sure. So normally, normal bud break would be, let's say, first few days of April. We were seeing bud break first few days of May. We had bloom. Oh man, yeah, bloom is 3 weeks late, almost in second week of July. We hit veraison third week of August. It was really slow, and because all of this is one thing, and that's that the party's over by Halloween. Someone might say, "No, Dev, that's not true." I'm like, no. Stack all the harvest. Look at your first freeze. Party's usually over by Halloween. So, and sometimes we end up on a worser side of that. So sometimes we have frost as early as second week of October. So I remember in 2019. We had our first frost on October 4th, second frost on the 14th. But usually at that point, I think if you hadn't had your fruit in, it would have definitely been too late after October 14th. So I will say that part of that is it does compress our growing season a bit. So because I think here you guys see bud break much earlier, right? Early March.
What was it this year? Quite frankly,
but also your
on time,
pure hours
right?
of sunlight.
That's the cool thing, Bart, that I didn't realize till Sam was explaining that to me when we were up there, that they have extra hours of sunlight, so you're getting a little bit more of
the calendar might be shorter, but the amount of degree hours and photosynthesis hours are close to the same. If you start with the later start and the earlier finish.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I know. Summertime, I think my favorite thing is you can have last light at a little after 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
So last light around the solstice is usually around 10. So it's we have very different, but that also does mean that when we hit a heat wave, that's a lot of hours of pretty extreme heat.
Right.
Well, I was going to ask about that because on the label it's talking about the hill that this is grown on, and that with a lot of cooling, even on 100-degree days. How many excessive days like that do you really get in Washington?
I would say typical, we're probably breaking 3 digits at least 3 weeks of the summer. Maybe not all at once, but it might be once you total it up, I'd say at least 3 weeks.
And here, Sam, I mean, we're not doing that. Why is it in Washington?
Depends on the summer, but one of the things about Walla Walla and Devyani, before we're recording, you talked about this. We're in this classic Northern California Bay Area pattern this week, where fog rolls in, sometime after dark, and burns off by it's 10:30 right now, and it doesn't look like it's burning almost 11.
Yeah,
burns off by 11 or noon. And that is, sort of acts as our natural cooling, even if, you go a little further inland or a little further north away from that, and you'll get much warmer temperatures, much less fog. Walla Walla is far inland, so you don't have, the aquatic, marine influences are coming off of the Columbia River. So you can hold on to,
or out of the mountains,
or out of the mountains, coming down from the Blue Mountains or whatever. So it's just a.
So how far are you from Willamette Valley?
So about 4 hours in the car. There's a couple mountain ranges. No, just one mountain range that separates us. But basically, the Blue Mountains kind of just flank that, where you head over towards Pendleton, and then La Grande, and then basically you would just kind of as a crow flies, then you'd make it to, I guess, and there's like the Cascades, and then there's Willamette Valley. So,
well, sorry to interrupt, but the Willamette Valley is much closer to the coast, and it's not like it's due south of you.
No.
It's south and west of you.
I think that's one thing that someone needs to also think about is that we're about 5 hours inland if you're a drive from coast to just straight down 84 and to Walla Walla. So we're pretty inland, so there's not any kind of like big mass of water that has to be heated up before the air temperature changes, which is what you have here. You have the ocean. So I would say for us, though, we do have more temperature like diurnal swings, and that is something in our favor. So maybe it's 100 degrees for a couple hours in the day, but then it will drop down to 55, 50 degrees at night.
Right.
So we're seeing usually pretty big swings. Walla Walla even more so, just because we do have the cool air coming off the Blue Mountains. Yakima Valley is about 2 hours north of Walla Walla. Famous for DeBrule cherries. I don't know, but yeah, Yakima Chucker cherries. And also apples. So just agricultural bounty in general, just a long-standing history of that there. But DeBrule Vineyard, so this was planted in 1991, this block. And it's on north-facing slope. And I think what that does...
By the way, I'm pouring myself more.
And I also want you to, because we just bottled it on March 8th, and so I still feel like it's like kind of opening up and coming out of its shell. I actually opened this... I just put the cork back in, put it in the fridge last night, but it's 22 in general, because it was such a late harvest for us. The acidity that we're seeing, and also stylistically, winemaking-wise, we've been wanting to make a fresher style of Chardonnay, just bring down the alcohol a bit. Not going to say this is a low alcohol wine by any means. I mean, it's around 13%.
Yeah, it's in the sweet spot.
Yeah, but I would say like previously with this vineyard, we were looking at closer to 14%. So it's like stylistically 2022, the vintage kind of served up on a platter, this perfect opportunity to pick not on sugar, but on basically watching acids come down. And this is something that when I talk to some of my friends in the Willamette Valley making Chardonnay, that's kind of more what they're picking on, is waiting for the acids and not looking at bricks so much. So this was brought in at, I believe, 21.8 bricks. And so, just a hair under 22 with a TA of 7. And so just trying to kind of take a step in that direction of having that flavor maturity, but then being able to pick in a style that more we were looking for. Now, the green apple thing.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah,
Please,
yeah.
And then I'll ask my question.
Yeah, the green apple thing, winemaking-wise, I did not go through ML. So that's where that's coming from. So I think that's something where wanting to experiment a little bit more with malolactic, but I think it's hard because our malics are a little bit higher than they are here. So like 2.4 grams per liter versus like what kind of malics are you usually seeing in your whites here?
I'd have to pay attention. Bart, you got to answer that?
3,
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, 2.5 to 3.5. I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So I guess
I mean, it's really varietal and site specific, though.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess with this one, I think because we were kind of in the mid 2s, I did not go through ML. And instead, what we did was just a lot of batonnage, a lot of leaf stirring. So did batonnage twice a month for this. Spent 16 months in barrel, and 10 of those months we did the biweekly batonnage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, so
It has a really nice richness, but yet the acid is what
super fresh.
was super fresh, and that's what it is. It's
So
super fresh.
it was. Yeah, you said you just bottled this.
Yeah.
So this is 2022. This was in basically what I think of as like a red wine length élevage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do 2 vineyard designate Chardonnays, and they both spend 16 months in barrel, and so it's quite a haul. So
And this was this new? It doesn't have like a huge oak signature on it.
no, there's 20%. There's kind of an interesting phenomenon with this site, is it does seem to kind of extract oak a little bit more. Meanwhile, like our French Creek is closer to 50% new, and if you put them side by side, you'd probably rate this as oakier.
Interesting.
Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah,
Just soaks it up.
it does.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it doesn't have quite the same like phenolic structure that French Creek does. French Creek it's a Wente clone, a little bit more texture and tannin. This one I think is clone 15. I'd have to ask Hugh. But yeah, but it's the north aspect though does help with just kind of retaining some of that freshness and acidity, and you don't really feel like your ripening is going over a cliff. Because when you have those heat spikes, I feel like your white wines tend to wear that the worst.
How many different varietals are you guys making?
Oof. So I'd say our our portfolio is focused on Cab, Syrah, Chardonnay, but in addition to that, play with some Roussanne, some Viognier, Grenache, Mourvedre, Merlot, Petit Verdot, Malbec, Cab Franc.
Wow.
Huh.
Yeah.
Lots going on.
Yeah.
Sounds familiar.
And every time we say we need to pare down our wines and bottle fewer SKUs, we then decide, oh my God, this Viognier is so delicious. Let's bottle 50 cases of it and pour it at Hospice de Rhone. So we do like
Again,
14 different wines.
Familiar.
I know. Yeah.
So do you spend most of your time now in the cellar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say, yeah. But we have 3 estate vineyards in the Walla Walla Valley. And so I usually spend, I spend at least one day kind of in the vineyards a week, which is exactly what I like. And then, of course, during different peak times, pruning, but also especially right now, we're shoot thinning like crazy. So shoot thinning, and then also in July when you're kind of looking at set crop adjustments and variation, that ticks up to more like 2 or 3 days a week. But I love it.
Are you guys still doing the Vital thing?
Yeah,
Will
yeah.
you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really cool.
Love to. So Vital Wines is this. It's a nonprofit label in Walla Walla, and really, it's just such an amazing. It's an amazing project that Ashley Trout from Brook and Bowl started. But basically, it's a nonprofit winery where all the proceeds go towards funding. Not just the SOS clinic, which is our local farm workers clinic, which will see patients with or without insurance, with or without documentation as well. But now they've been able to expand Vital to also help provide community-based resources for healthcare and healthcare advocacy for agricultural workers. So this is everything from care coordination. So they have examples of farm workers who maybe, they had one patient who basically had a cancer diagnosis. The care coordinator for Vital Wines helped this person coordinate all of their cancer treatment care. And there's also some other projects that are now more in the schools. So there are compulsory eye exams that happen in public schools, but basically the kid just goes home with a slip that says your kid failed the eye exam, and there's like no follow-up resources. So there's a whole separate set of funds that basically is from the sales of one of their wines that funds eyewear, like the hardware and the lenses for kids of farm workers. So during the pandemic, they also pooled funds from Vital to also pay for for paid time off for people who had to quarantine and couldn't go to work. So it's very much a beloved program in our valley. And I believe in 2022, they rolled out a new concept, which is the Guest Winemaker series. So myself, the Walls, Jade at Walla Walla Vintners, I believe Canvasback. There are several wineries that are making a wine for Vital, and we're making the rosé. So there's a 100% Mourvedre rosé from Seven Hills Vineyard, but everything is donated.
That's freaking
The
delicious.
fruit got donated, right?
Yes, exactly. Everything's donated. The fruit is donated. If you need barrels, the barrels are donated. We donate our winemaking. They have donated glass, labels, everything. But basically, all of this is donated so that when it hits the tasting room and hits their wine club, all of that money can be rechanneled into these community efforts to take care and to increase equity in our farm labor community.
Yeah.
Cool program.
Super cool.
No, it's amazing. It's having worked really closely with vineyard crews, just seeing some of the challenges they face when they need care and when they need help and what are the avenues. And it's just amazing to see now Vital is actually hiring a second care coordinator. And basically this person goes to the team meetings and meets with all the vineyard crews, and they know her by name and they know to reach out to her if they need something. And it's really great to have someone who's like your advocate, but also to help explain the system to you and make sure you get the care you need.
Right on. And you can find those. Can you buy those wines if you're out of state? They ship everywhere.
Absolutely, yeah. So Vital, just think of your Vital signs. So if you
Vital signs, Vital wines.
if you look it up,
I'm slow this morning. I need to
That's okay.
finish my coffee.
We'll add
Check
it
your
to the
vitals.
show line or show notes.
Absolutely. No, definitely order wine through Vital. Our rosé just hit their tasting room, and it's freaking delicious.
I think we're gonna need a case of that Mourvedre rosé.
100%.
I know. I also
Expensive.
picked up a case. I was like, patio season, let's go.
Yeah.
And that one has a little bit of Grenache in it too, so it's but it's delicious.
Sounds like you're speaking our language, Debbie.
It's savory, bone dry. I mean, need I say more? So yeah.
Well, it's interesting. We were talking a little bit about weather and degree days and things like that in your hot spells. What is going on with climate change? How are you seeing it impact you guys? What are you planning for the future in terms of that also?
Absolutely. I'd say for us, it's more like, it's less that things are getting warmer and more that we're getting more extreme. So it's like 2021 having 2 heat domes, right?
Right.
And then this last winter it was pretty rough. It was worse in Walla Walla, but we had a -11. We had a night where we hit -11 at 1,100 feet. That's the best way to remember it, 1,100 feet. So basically, because of the Blue Mountains, usually 1,100 feet is where you have this false sense of security since 1994 that there would be an inversion layer. And that basically the valley floor would be colder than everything above 1,100 feet. For the first time since 1994, we had the opposite happen. And basically, for every bit you climbed in elevation, the colder it got. So if you were in Mill Creek, if you were, at Seven Hills Vineyard, if you were at Eventide, our estate vineyard right next to Seven Hills, I think we saw anywhere from -9 to -11 up on that hillside as you went up. And meanwhile, the rocks were -6. But regardless, nothing got above -5 for like 8 hours. So it was also a very prolonged period of cold where we started to hit -5, I think, at like 1 o'clock in the morning. And then it just stayed until almost 1 o'clock the next day.
Wow.
So,
Oh my God. So like after sunrise, still didn't warm up.
I just remember checking and it was like almost noon and we were still not at 0.
And what time of the year was this?
This was second week, right about mid-January.
Yeah.
It was about, And so it was, I think January 11th. And it was rough just because the bud damage that we saw. The good news is that vines are like weeds and, they will grow when they want to grow. So
there's energy stored.
We had declared in some cases 90% bud death. And we left additional buds, but we're actually seeing more like 60%. So we're actually, because of how many people change their pruning practices with this knowledge, we should be looking at an almost normal crop in Cabernet. The thing that's been the 2 things I guess have been hit of the big 3 that we do in Walla Walla is Merlot and then Syrah. So Syrah is doing okay. It just really depends on site, and it also depends on clone is what we're noticing. Also own-rooted versus rootstock, just overall vine health, seeing a little bit of variance.
What's doing better, the own-rooted or the rootstocks?
The rootstock.
Rootstocks, okay.
Yeah, the rootstocks are stuff with just a little bit better, just having better vigor under the ground for them pushing. At this point in the season, we're seeing less damage. But then also some clones are not doing as well. But then Merlot is as bad as we thought it was. and that's kind of hard to see where like we left 100 buds and you're like, oh my God, I've got 10 shoots.
Wow.
Yeah. And not all of them have fruit. So it's going to be a rough one for Merlot, but these things happen. This is farming. I would say it was just kind of the double whammy of like I said, to not have an inversion layer. That's just, I was talking with some of the growers in the valley that have been farming grapes for over 40 years. And Tom Walliser, he brought out his spreadsheet that had every single winter event for his 40 years plus of farming in 1994. So 30 years later. That's crazy.
Yeah.
They talk about frost protection up there way more than I think we do down here. I mean, it's insane.
Well, and it's interesting because we talk about people moving north now, like Lake County. But we were just yakking the other day on the show, and it was somebody was saying it's hotter in Lake County than it is in Napa.
Well, it's always been hotter in Lake County than Napa. I mean, Lake County's hot.
Yeah.
It's inland. It's locked. It's got high mountains. So it's always been warm up there.
You guys can't kick up those big turbines up on the hill and get those things going at high speed.
Reverse the wind machines.
Right.
I mean, we had those running, but I think what's also hard is
Brian's talking about the power generating windmills.
The big windmills.
Oh no, we have those. Yeah, it sounds like honestly on a cold night, if you are driving through the valley, it sounds like you're surrounded by choppers, like helicopters.
Wow,
They're
you can actually
super
hear 'em.
loud. They're very loud, and but they work. The only thing is with no inversion layer,
There was no warm air to move. Yeah.
Yeah.
so you're running it and it wasn't changing anything. So that's kind of the harm there. But usually in Walla Walla with the Blue Mountains there, we like always see an inversion. And I would say like when you're talking about like Washington in general, Columbia Valley in general, Walla Walla seems to be a little bit of an outlier because we have our own kind of Les Mistral of the Blue Mountains where basically with that inversion layer, we have all that warm air from the valley floor pushed up at night and then it rolls down. So, basically daytime temperatures up in the hills are like 15 degrees cooler.
Sorry, we're geeking out on your wine here.
Actually, let's
Aromatics.
And nobody's even tasted it yet.
no.
Crazy.
Let's segue into this because actually this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. So this is Blue Mountain Vineyard 2021, the hottest vintage we've had in actually ever. Sorry, that does take the cake. Hottest vintage ever. 2 hot heat domes, one right around set. So that was last week of June through 4th of July, and then another one in August right after variation. So also a very light crop year because of that. We just didn't have very good set because of that first heat dome. But this is at the foothills of the Blue Mountains at about 1,300 feet elevation. And so what you see is like, all right, let's say it's 105 degrees on the valley floor, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. This vineyard will probably be about 10 degrees cooler than that. And then when the inverse happens where you then have kind of the shoulder seasons and it's cool at night, it will be maybe 5 to 10 degrees warmer as you hit the blues. And this changes. We love to go camping up at the top of the Blue Mountains at a place called Jubilee Lake. And when it's 100-something degrees, it's like 80 up there. And you're on the lake having a great time with the bottle of rosé and blissfully unaware.
Or a can of rosé.
Or a can of rosé.
Rosé.
Actually, probably better so you don't have any glass around the lake. But
See, there you go.
I have a hydro flask that fits exactly 750 ml. So
Of course you do.
the essentials, guys.
This wine has moved into my cheeks, by the way.
Yeah.
It just set up shop.
Yeah.
I think it just
Resident.
built a
It
house.
lives there now.
But I guess so with this wine, I
Oh,
think
my.
it's such a fun expression of Syrah from the valley because we really have like 3 distinctive terroirs for the valley in general, and I think Syrah shows it so well. Where you have the foothills of the Blue Mountains, you have the rocks, which is kind of the hottest little sub pocket of the Walla Walla because of the cobblestones. I mean, it just radiates heat off of those stones. And then you have the Sylvain, so you have the 7 hills. You have kind of the windy, very silt loam, thin silt loam, and it's also kind of more dry and windy out there. So Blue Mountain, for me, I work with Phelps clone in all of these different areas, and what I've noticed is that you get this kind of crunchy pomegranate of the foothills fruit, and sometimes also maybe in a good way a little bit of herbaceousness, but it just has this kind of cooling sensation even in the hottest vintage that we've ever had.
It's that crunchy pomegranate
Yeah.
that I think is setting up shop inside Brian's face right now.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's
Steel in his face.
yeah, and again, I love Syrah, but Walla Walla has, and for me it emanates from the rocks, but I'm stoked that you brought something from the Blue Mountains because there's just such unique wines. There's Syrah, it's Syrah, but there's nobody in California and probably nobody in France who's making Syrah that tastes like this. That sort of red fruit as opposed to blue fruit. That crunchy pomegranate is it's not like overly meaty or anything. It's delicious. Yeah. Thanks for bringing this.
Comment on your label.
Yeah.
For me, having studied a lot of Frank Lloyd Wright and been a docent at one of the homes in Chicago, that looks like a Frank Lloyd Wright home.
Oh, Joe
interesting.
Chauncey, I hope you're listening. That's our architect. Joe would be flattered by that comparison. Joe designed our building, and he...
Wait, why didn't
he's
your mom
very
design
talented.
the building?
Well, she doesn't do commercial, so she does more residential. Her whole thing is like... it's not reuse, but it's
Brian
basically...
did his
Yeah.
research.
When you remodel old homes, like to basically like restore and kind of celebrate some of the pieces, but then bring it like the modern transitional architecture. That's that's her wheelhouse, and she's very amazing at that. But Joe does wineries, and he also designs our labels. So naturally, kind of, this is a modern take on the chateau because we're trying to decide what we want to do for a label. And if you come to our building, you'll notice it's a lot of gorgeous, reclaimed wood, but also a ton of metric tons and tons of concrete. So this building's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And I think if there was one thing that we could decide on for a label for the next, 10, 20 years, it's definitely the building. So it's a tale as old as time, putting the chateau on your label, but a little bit of a different twist.
Oh, it's very classy.
And it's an amazing. I actually haven't been to the winery. I've driven past it a bunch of times, from between Walla Walla and the rocks, and it definitely stands out from a far distance as a pretty unique building on that downslope into the rocks.
This is a really good wine.
Brian, you enjoying that? Syrah?
Yeah. Hey, when you talk about corks, I noticed you have two different sort of enclosures going on here.
Yeah.
So what's your thought process, and do you have any control over what you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. So for our white wines, even for our high-end whites, we have switched to Noma cork. It's a technical cork. It's sugarcane, so it's not actually from cork. Part of this is just to have the consistency from bottle to bottle, but also no TCA. And in this case, this is a Noma cork Reserva, which has some of the least amount of oxygen ingress, just because I know this goes to our wine club, and myself, Jesus, but also our wine club members have this wine going back to 2018, and we want people to be able to cellar this and lay it down if they want. And I think that this is just the bummer of opening a corked bottle is you go through the 5 stages of grief, right? So just to touch on that real fast. It's first denial. What? No, it's not corked. They start bargaining. It's well, maybe if I decant it, maybe if I put some plastic saran wrap in it, maybe it will blow off.
Right.
Then you get into the anger, then the depression. Why do I even buy wine? It's so expensive. And then you finally accept it and you're like, it's fucking corked.
Wow. The 5 stages of cork grief.
It's real. But
non-linear, you get back and you can be pissed off just all over again.
But I think that for our reserve reds, though, we go with a very nice cork from Scott Labs that's guaranteed TCA free, and these are just amazing corks as well. But they, it's a little bit of a different intent where it's the Reserva is almost supposed to kind of stop time, and this one is supposed to let the wine kind of age and breathe and evolve and cellar. So I think it's more trying to kind of extend the life on your reserve whites that people can lay them down versus the reds. These are very much meant to age. We're trying to craft things with a certain acidity and tannin texture that, these are definitely meant to lay down. And in that sense, I believe, natural cork's the way to go.
And that's a nice cork, too.
Yeah. And, and Scott Labs does an amazing job with their quality control. I rarely find corked bottles with these. And if I do, they have something called Scott Promise. They just, no questions asked. You get a little credit in your account, and that's it.
Has a cork company moved up to Walla Walla and set up camp?
So we have Molly Forest for Scott Labs, and we have different local reps. So I know M.A. Silva has a rep, Cork Supply, Scott Labs, and they're either based in Walla Walla or they are in the area at least. But I would say a lot of people, Walla Walla is a very fun place to live. We have great restaurants, shops, it's parks, it's beautiful, and then you can get to any of the other major wine regions within an hour to 2 hours. So usually people, if they set up shop, it's there.
Yeah. What kind of music are you guys listening to in the cellar?
We are always listening to something.
And who gets to pick?
It's hard. I try to lob it to my team, but I always end up kind of being the one to set it. But I have a Pandora with I think I've maxed out the number of stations they'll let you have. And I try to periodically clean them up, but we listen to everything. And usually we change stations about 2, if not 3 times a day. So it could be anything from...
What do you put on first?
Oh, that depends.
What's the song that sets it off if you need to get people going?
Okay, well, there is one cue to my team.
Yeah.
And it's usually when it's the LFG, the LFG days. It's I think if they hear
Let's fucking go, John.
Yeah. If they hear like Def Leppard or AC/DC come on, they're like, oh shit.
40 tons rolling in today.
Yeah, I know. Usually I call it cabalanche, but it's basically like the 1 week of hell where you're like you just close your eyes at night and all you see is grapes and it's cabalanche. And they know that when like the truck's about to pull up and that music shifts, it's like, all right, guys, like lock in. We're gonna have our like 2-3 biggest receiving days. So, and then same with bottling. But I would say the rest of the time, like it could be anything from like Kings of Leon to Starfucker to reggae, and that could be classic, Bob Marley to more modern Californian reggae like Tribal Seeds. So it's and then every once in a while on a rainy day, there's probably a Chris Stapleton radio going, Brandy Carlisle. I mean, seriously, listen to everything from like folk, but yeah, trying to think of another top play.
Stacey Buchanan hasn't gotten to you guys with just his pure death metal playlists yet?
No, sadly, no. I will say though, like one of our favorite, probably most. I'm just going through the Pandora, like most played. Then of course, like I have a Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg playlist, but then that's kind of like the obvious on the nose one. But my favorite one is actually a Beastie Boys Pandora, because this one is super eclectic. So it has like, it has Beastie Boys, but then also have like Rage Against the Machine and Audioslave and just kind of some like different eclectic rock and rap kind of shuffling through. So yeah,
sounds like a good playlist.
Yeah,
I'm down.
That one's great. It's like old school hip hop and then like Rage Against the Machine. It's like, yeah,
it's awesome.
Yeah.
What are you doing down here right now? Why are you down here?
I'm visiting my friend Sabrina Lewick. She's the enologist at Trefethen. She's a dear friend of mine. Cool. She made the move down to the Napa Valley last year in the springtime. She's on the final leg of studying for her MW. She passed the theory, so now she needs to pass the tasting.
Cool.
And
well, she doesn't have time to visit you. She just needs to study.
She does not.
I was going to say.
She's sitting for a couple of weeks, and so I asked her, I was like, hey, like I'm thinking of coming down in May, but I know your exam's coming up. And she was like, please come. So I think she needs a break. And I had to move up a bottling, which was also like just the craziest. I don't know why I did this to myself, but I bottled May 3rd, so right after Hospice
Oh my God.
Brown.
That's right. I remember talking to you and we were like, there was not a lot of free time.
Yeah, so it's like bottling that Friday, and then also that's the Friday of our spring release weekend. So it's like up at 4:30 in the morning for bottling, and then talking to people till 10 o'clock at night for a winemaker dinner. That was fun. So, but because of moving up that bottling, I was like, do I have a chill May? Like, what is this? I'd never have a chill May. And so I'm down here just doing some tasting, just trying to learn more. I think I'm a lifelong student of wine, and all my travel and trips tend to center around wine. So a little bit of catching up with a good friend, but also just a lot of just pounding the pavement.
So what are you finding in your tastings?
Oh, man.
Where have you been?
I was going to joke. I was like, I like the expensive stuff.
Yeah.
But I like the sites.
As he should. As he should.
I seem to really like mountain sites in the Napa Valley. So I'm really enjoying stuff off of Howell Mountain. And then also Atlas Peak has stood out to me. Atlas Peak has a very similar kind of the sandy tannin profile that I find in Savain. And it was weird because I stuck my nose in it and I tasted it and I was like, gosh, this tastes like home. It was weird. But also then for Chardonnay, I mean, I'm a huge Chardonnay nerd, so been enjoying stuff from Hyde.
Yeah.
Yep. See, I was like, and
You do. You have that taste.
Yeah.
And I also been really impressed by the Coombsville cabs, where I know that someone was telling me that those used to be the kind of less desirable, less ripe kind of blending components, and then now it's essential with the way things have gotten warmer over time. So
Merlot.
Yeah, especially for Merlot. And then on the Sonoma side, I was with Andy and Jenna at Dumal yesterday and just had a grand old time tasting a bunch of stuff. They were way too generous with their time. I think we spent like 3 hours there. But I'm super excited about their Wild Mountainside Syrah. That's very cool. And they're more based in the Green Valley.
Green Valley.
I hope I'm not butchering that.
Yeah,
but yeah.
no, you're right. Green Valley of Russian River.
Yeah. So
yeah, I just recently tasted that wine.
Yeah.
It's delicious.
And it has like kind of something similar to this Blue Mountain, which is like a little bit of like the 22 will show it even more, but like a blackberry, like a wild blackberry and like blackberry leaf, like some black tea. But I found that in their Wild Mountainside, and I was like, that's familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Wild Mountain, I mean, that's not like a little tiny bottling either. That's a larger bottling. I mean, it was really good.
But I think what's cool is, we met at Hospice de Rhone. Well, first we met in Walla Walla for Celebrate, and then, saw you again for Hospice de Rhone. That's how we talked about doing this. But it's like, I think the people you meet is kind of what also drives your trips. And so I hadn't really been down here before because I didn't really know people yet. But then you talk to a few people, and next thing you know, you're planning a trip, and you've got like over 12 places to go, and you're power tasting left and right and having a great time. So
That's how it's done.
Power tasting.
Yeah,
I like
power
that
tasting.
term.
yeah, like I said, you're doing some
Professionals
hard
only,
work.
John. Professionals
Yeah.
only.
It's hard work, but someone has to do it. So
For professional reasons.
Yeah,
too.
for professional reasons.
no, I love it. I think I always come back a little bit inspired. Like for me, wanting to do a little bit more malolactic potentially in Chardonnays, especially. Especially if it's under 2 grams or around 2 grams. It's like, why not?
Yeah.
But aren't your pHs generally higher up there? So does that have an effect on not wanting to do malolactic? Is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so sometimes, checking potassium up front is very important. There are some sites I work with that are not only high potassium, but also high calcium. And in those cases, I actually do have to do ml partly to deacidify. So I'll go through partial ml
Interesting.
because I have a Chardonnay site, for example, it's in the White Bluffs AVA, little high plateau, and it's high calcium. So pH, that's the hard part and why it has to be partial, is pH is like 3.4 from the jump, but you have like 5 grams of malic acid. So I had to do some partial ml and basically just monitor pH, sensory, and then basically make the decision based off of that, like sensory and a little bit of numbers to say, okay, party's over, ml's done.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I would say like French Creek and De Brule, we're looking at maybe like 3.3 pH on this guy for 22, and then French Creek was 3.15.
What about this?
This tends to be one of our lower pH Syrahs, especially relative to the rocks. So the rocks is a different animal entirely.
Right.
4.2, 4.4.
Yeah, and for the rocks, I tend to harvest pretty early. So one thing I've found is that the rocks, especially with kind of the fruit maturity and being so close to those hot stones, the flavor profile can kind of go a little bit over a cliff. And this is all personal opinion, personal style. I do think that the rocks can have a really wonderful floral note, but you can capture that at lower bricks. So again, checking flavors and other parameters of maturity and not just numbers, just like tasting, do I like this? Do I think the flavors are there? Our Walla Walla Syrah is usually all rocks, and that one is about 13% alcohol because I pick at essentially white wine parameters.
Right.
And we end up with a pH of 3.8 instead of 4.2.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting animal. This one, it depends on the year. So 21 being so hot, this was a little bit higher than usual, being about 3.65. But 22 on the other side is 3.5.
I mean, because Syrah, it just doesn't translate like it does here. And Syrah doesn't translate a lot of times, right? But those standard numbers that we talk about here don't mean anything up there.
Yeah.
That's the sense I have.
Absolutely. And I think also the being prepared for in varieties like Petit Verdot or even Cabernet, looking at Malics leading up to harvest, I think is important because people will say, oh, well, the pH on this Cabernet is 3.1, 3.2. It's not ready relative to like other Walla Walla pHs. And I'm like, yeah, but with 2.3 grams of Malic.
Right.
So, and I will say also with the more heat spikes we have, the higher potassium we tend to have. So that also messes with your yeast metabolism and your pH after just alcoholic. So there's stuff to look at, but I also think ultimately it boils down to sensory. I know a lot of people say that, but I think it's more like what I hope people find in these wines is like a fresh cut fruit characteristic, and then kind of all the other stuff that comes from winemaking, the extraction level, the oak profile. But I really want like a fresh cut fruit profile in these wines, and so does Jesus. And I think that is more what I'm looking for, is that first shift where you're going from like, yeah, this isn't ready to like, okay, this is feeling fresh and just about ready, and then you're making that pick call.
What are 2 other places up there besides you guys that you think people should know about that you're kind of excited about their wines?
That's a tough one.
I mean, you don't have to pick two. You can
I need more than two.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll throw some out there just for people that have not had Walla Walla wines before.
If you haven't had Walla Walla wines before, then I think like an easy one I would say is go get a bottle of Le Col. You can probably find their Walla Walla Cab in most places, and it's one of my favorite wines, and I think it's also one of the most representative wines. Their vineyards for Walla Walla Cab tend to be very similar to ours. They're on the Sylvain hillside, but then they also work with Pepperbridge and just a lot of like long-standing famous vineyards going into, I think it's like a $40 or $45 bottle of Cabernet. I think if people understood kind of the quality of the fruit behind that, their mind would be a little bit boggled. But then I would say, okay, wines that I enjoy. I really love Alluve. It's a project in Mill Creek. Kelly and JJ Manozzi, so they're husband-wife, retired Air Force pilots, and they went through the enology and viticulture program a couple years ahead of me, and they're just making phenomenal wines up there in that cooler Mill Creek corridor.
Yeah.
Of course, get your hands on a bottle of Figgins. I think it's an amazing single estate Bordeaux project. And then I'd say personally, I'm a wine club member at Roti and Grow Grain, and I love their kind of outside the box wines, especially for Grow Grain. I think Matt is doing things with a very different approach. He's also studying for his Master of Wine. I believe he's in the process of completing his diploma, and if not, has already. And he just has a very, very interesting perspective on some of the sites. It's fun to see someone work with the same fruit as you and have two very, very different
right
and end results. So
yeah.
But yeah, another small husband-wife run winery, and they're doing great things.
Cool.
Do you have room in your club for new members?
Absolutely, always,
Excellent.
and new exciting wines coming down the pipeline. So we're
Jeez.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things where we're finally at a point where I think we're starting to shuffle things around a little bit and start thinking about some of these small. Now that we have 3 estate vineyards, now that we're starting to get fruit from these vineyards, especially like our Walla Walla Cab, that it's Eventide, but it's a vineyard that we purchased from another winery. And actually, it's a very personal vineyard because that's also one that I helped plant and then take care of with Sadie when I was on that vineyard management team. And so literal blood, sweat, and tears in that vineyard. It was planted in 2016, and then, I took care of it 2017, 2018. We started taking fruit from it in 2019, right as we first opened, and it became our favorite cab. And we started working with the vineyard more and more, and then bought it from Bet's family in 2022. So we have had all those grapes go into our Walla Walla Cab this whole time. But really, something that shines for us on that property is the Merlot. So we're doing a single estate Bordeaux blend that's basically going to be 80% Merlot, and it's just to highlight just how exceptional the Merlot is on this hillside.
A little right bank action.
Mm-hmm. To be honest, it needed the Cabernet to soften it.
Right.
It's a very different animal.
Whoa.
It's amazing. It's amazing. It's
The
a little
Merlot needed the
monster.
Cabernet to soften it.
Yeah. It had some Clone 6 soften it. That's the craziest part. Yeah. So like
We need to get a bottle of that too.
Yeah.
It's really good. We're only going to do 100 cases, and so that's something that we're like, okay, let's try to do these wines that are more like wines of like passion and wines that we're just really excited about, and put those into our wine club.
There you go.
Right on.
there you go.
And you do have a full tasting room and a restaurant also?
Yes, we have Pincho. It's a tapas and wine bar up in Woodinville, Washington. So just a quick drive over from Seattle. Yeah, it's amazing Spanish food, but also some like Pacific Northwest, whatever's local and seasonal. Lauren Jackson's our chef out there, and she's killing it. She's killing it because there's so much fun produce to play with, but also like local seafood up in Seattle. So she's getting to kind of make the best of both worlds, where you have like the clear Spanish influence and the Spanish ingredients, but the final thing is really Pacific Northwest fresh.
Spain has a tremendous amount of seafood there,
Right.
in their diet.
Yeah.
For sure. Well,
Love this.
So you were at Hospice Drone also?
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Did you have fun?
Oh, it was a blast.
What'd you learn?
So again, just
Don't try and keep up with the French.
I think, again, just a great reminder that the wine world is so small, and you can have people come to a region that they've never heard of before, and next thing you know, you're leaving with travel plans for 2025. So it's I had a really great time with the winemakers and winery team from the Ventoux region. The Ventoux, it's funny, there's a lot of similarities, and they said this is something like in reading about it and hearing about the Ventoux, it's like, wow, it sounds a lot like Walla Walla. And then coming to Walla Walla, they said something, wow, this reminds us of the Ventoux. And it was funny because Sunday was supposed to be kind of like my first day off in like 3 weeks. And instead I found it taking them to the winery, and we had the party on the patio. So we're having paella and sharing wine before they went to their flight in Pasco at 6:00. And just having a great time. So it was.
Well, in the previous hospice, there was a Walla Walla seminar and there was a Ventoux seminar, and there was talk of that, like the similarities between the two growing areas.
It was interesting. Everything from what other crops and like agricultural,
right.
What is vibrant in that area is very similar. We have a lot of apples and cherries. Everything from also the soil types, but also the influence of the mountains.
And kind of the idea of moving farther away to get cooler fruit to keep things fresh. And that's what
Todd?
the guy that we had here that
Leo McCloskey?
No, the guy that's friends of Joel Gott, does the work with Joel Gott.
Beeler.
Charles Beeler.
Yeah.
He talked about that also, like the necessity to move to stay within the fruit that they wanted.
Right.
And that's, you guys are moving up the hill in looking for
that fresh cut fruit.
Fresh cut fruit. Yeah. And I think also like you can find that there's some sites where maybe that apex moment is also not conducive then to the other things you want in a wine. But I would say for the most part, we've just been trying to find those vineyards throughout the Columbia Valley and Walla Walla where you have just like that perfect moment and opportunity to capture that wine and capture the site that comes with. We're also planting at 2,200 feet elevation, which is just outside the bounds of the AVA. So but we're not alone. So also there's another winery that has purchased land in the Mill Creek above 2,000 feet elevation. And I think we're going to have to petition together to expand that definition of the boundary. So
or a new boundary.
A new boundary or something, but it's basically looking ahead to the future. We receive over 24 inches of rain there. So for every mile, I think it was very interesting. So basically from Highway 12, which is kind of north of the Walla Walla Valley.
Highway 12 runs right through Walla Walla, just like Highway 12 runs right through all of this.
Okay.
Different Highway 12. But
That's right.
You get on and you're like, oh, I'm on Highway 12. This feels so weird and familiar.
That's so funny. I know. I took that this morning. I didn't even think about it. But it's so basically you gain about 2 inches of rain for every mile that you approach from Highway 12. So at Highway 12, you're at about 11 inches of rain, and then you travel 5 miles into about 1,400 feet elevation of the base of the Blues, and now you're at like 20 to 22 inches of rain, and it climbs from there. So it's something that, looking ahead to the future, we definitely are thinking about water. I think that things are okay for now, but it's important to think not just like now, 5 years from now, or 10 years from now, but 20 years from now. I think that doing the work to get vineyards established up there is probably the future for being able to dry farm.
And did the Canadian wildfires affect any of your vineyards?
Which year?
Well, they've been on fire for a while. So
I was going to say,
wondering.
poor Canada. It's been fire and frost, and freeze. So yeah, it's I would say it's definitely has impacted some areas of the Columbia Valley. I'd say in 2020 we also had a convergence of fires in Willamette and fires in Yakima and fires in BC all at once. And oddly enough, the Walla Walla Les Mistral, our air quality was much better there, and we had like in terms of smoke markers, we had much lower, if not negligible, numbers compared to like some of the stuff on Red Mountain and Yakima Valley. So I think that was the hard part, is like 1 hour away in terms of where it was grown, but especially more susceptible varieties. So I know we don't really grow Pinot. It's but my friends in Willamette were definitely suffering on the Pinot side. For us, the Grenache, Mourvedre, Petit Verdot, those were all varieties that did not make it through 2020 for the most part. Yeah. So, and then otherwise, I would say since then we've had fire events, but we haven't had anything that was of even half the AQI we had in 2020, thankfully.
It's because I got the sprinklers on all the time. We
use that water. Use those water.
It was
rates.
weird for us coming from here, where we were in like extended drought period, and then going up to Walla Walla and actually seeing fields of green and seeing sprinkler systems on
Surface wall, all those irrigation ditches. Just
we do
running.
that at 2:00 in the morning, so our neighbors don't tell.
Well,
Now, Brian, that was years ago. The drought's over.
No, I think everyone has just replanted their lawns to California native grasses and put down bark and chips and rocks and
I have no grass at all.
yeah.
I was
all
going to say
chips.
we're getting rid of our grass if we can, but somewhere along the road, someone planted Bermuda grass in our front yard, and I don't think that thing will ever die. So
You sure it's not alfalfa?
I wish.
We saw a ton of alfalfa.
Oh no, there's a ton of alfalfa. I was going to say, so like a lot of the green fields you were looking at were
Yeah.
probably. So one thing about Walla Walla is kind of interesting, maybe from a water rights perspective, a little bit political, is you have all of this open land that likely will never be grapes because it's all been dryland wheat. So there's not a water right on it. So, and you'll see like hundreds of acres of swatches of dryland wheat because even with the last 10 years of more heat units, they still have been able to dryland wheat, or maybe they have a very small supplemental water right, but it's, for the most part, much of our wheat does not receive irrigation. Alfalfa does need it. You'll see a couple rotations of corn, but not much. I think usually that's someone is just trying to rotate something in, just because corn does require so much water. So it's
Yeah.
relative to grapes or anything else. But I guess all that is to say, yeah, all the green rolling hills of Walla Walla, it's really, I think something that's very beautiful, and how like the Blue Mountains really do look blue. When you guys were there, that's like the peak blue season of the Blue Mountains, because you have all the green from the fields and the blue trees and just the pink at night. It's gorgeous.
Cool.
Yeah, we had a blast. Get back up there.
Yeah.
Find a reason or not. Just go.
Yeah. But Hospice de Rhone, I think it was just 2022 going down to Paso for that. I think for me, it was just such an amazing way to kind of be introduced to some of these regions that you don't get to taste very often, like some South African wines, right? To taste Molyneux from the Swartland, and and also to get a little bit of a dive on Paso. And we have Alban clones. We have,
Right.
you know,
Then you get to hang out with John Albin.
yeah, exactly. And oh my gosh, why is the name escaping me? The other big one for Rhone variety.
Well, Tablas.
Tablas.
Yeah.
But to actually be able to then go to Tablas and taste the wines. And so I think for me that was just fun to kind of like go to the source on a few things and then also be exposed to new. But this one, it was funny. I couldn't get through the grand tasting at all. I think I spent 30 minutes out away from the table and I tasted one wine. And I think it was mainly because it was a bunch of kind of seeing my friends all in one room and seeing Walla Walla basically put on a show for the wine world to pull this off. And it was tremendous. I think I was just so proud of my town watching it all happen. And also the organizers, I mean, they worked so hard to pull that off. And I think they also got a taste for just how, like, you know, anything you need, we'll do it. We're a very like grassroots community. We'll get it done.
I loved what you said earlier about, you know, push the guy in front of you and pull the guy behind you. You definitely get that spirit and that vibe
Absolutely.
there. And that grand tasting was, it was awesome. It was very overwhelming. There was 1,000 people on that beautiful crutch pad, and I think I tasted a couple more wines than you, but it was still like most of the time you just talked.
Think you never get hospice here?
You know, I have a dream of that, but
Someone actually has to do the work.
Right.
yeah,
is the
and
thing,
have
is-
the spaces to do it.
right.
And it, I mean, I obviously wasn't there, but it sounds like it could be done, but it needs like a group to do it. And
Yeah.
I mean, we're not organized well enough to do it. I mean,
Before us, definitely
Right.
not.
You just
but-
tell us
but-
where to be and what time,
Right.
and we'll show up a little
but
late.
I talked to
We'll
John.
have twice as much wine as we're supposed to.
I talked to John Toolsy yesterday about it because he was up there, and what he said, he goes, it was very obvious that Walla Walla rolled out the carpet
And
for
pushed hard.
hospice and pushed hard and made it happen. And he felt like Vicky was very happy, and like it went over extremely well. So
Yeah, because I know there's a bit of a void. I mean, we are, I think Walla Walla County, the population is like just over 40,000 people. But then to give you an idea, we have people travel in, we see almost 1 million visitors. So when you like try to conceptualize residents versus visitors, but like one thing that was kind of like a very obvious, but then not really until you get there, there were no rental cars within a 2-hour drive. Like no one could rent a car. They were all exhausted from this. So many people didn't have a car, didn't have a driver, assumed we had Uber.
The one Bob, the Uber driver, was busy all week.
He was awesome.
He was awesome.
I actually ran into people that like took up driving just for that weekend because they were like, there's no Uber. So, there's like maybe 1 or 2 Uber drivers the whole time. So, I had a few friends drive people to the Pasco airport because they assumed they could get an Uber to Pasco. And it was like, I'll pick you up in the morning.
But you sounds like Bob.
Yeah.
Everybody knows Bob.
Everyone knows Bob.
Everybody knows Bob, the Uber driver.
Yeah.
The Uber driver of Walla Walla.
There's one other too. I'm blanking on her name, but yeah, she.
I don't think if she was working that week, she wasn't answering none of our.
Devyani, how do people get in touch? What are all of?
How do they get some of this Syrah
things?
Yeah.
How do they buy wines, etc.?
I would say the best way would be, to go on our website, come visit us. I would say definitely would be the best way to get in touch. But obviously, it's not always. People aren't always, planning a trip to Walla Walla. But I wish they would.
They should.
They should. I mean, we've got amazing food out there. We've got amazing.
Eat at Saffron. James and I sat at the bar one night and just ordered some appetizers and some cocktails. And
T-Max was great.
Freaking great.
Oh, T-Max is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Where'd we go? What was the dinner we did? Was at Hadaway's.
Oh, my favorite.
That was awesome.
And the Thief Wine Shop.
Yeah.
We had a great time there.
And did you guys go to Pasatiempo at all, or?
We didn't make it to Pasatiempo. I went there with Hak Waka Waka when I was there in 2022. But we had lunch at the bistro.
Brasserie 4?
Brasserie 4, there it is on
Mainstay.
On right down Main Street. The restaurant scene. The restaurant, like, you could spend a week in Walla Walla and never even get into your rental car. Just like walking up, and it's such a walkable town.
Yeah.
All the tasting rooms, all the restaurants. They're all right there. Get Bob the Uber driver to take you down to Valdemar and out to Roti.
And I would say also, that's how I got here. There's a direct flight like 3 times a day from SFO to Pasco, which is like 1 hour away from Walla Walla, if that. And there's no security. Right. I think I left my house an hour and a half before my flight, and I like parked my car, checked my bag, and still had like 30 minutes to twiddle my thumbs.
Sounds like Santa Rosa.
Yeah.
It reminded me of the Maui airport.
There's now a direct flight from Santa Rosa, the Avello, I think, from Santa Rosa to Pasco.
Oh,
so for those of Sonoma County residents,
Alaska.
Alaska, go up to Seattle and then down into Walla Walla, which is great too.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, it's becoming more accessible.
It's definitely becoming more accessible. And so I'd say, first and foremost, plan a trip to Walla Walla. You won't regret it. You'll love it. But otherwise, look us up on our website. So it's ValdemarEstates.com. Send us an email. Get in touch with us about our wine.
Social media.
So
you can always follow, Valdemar Estates. But you can also follow me. It's Devyani Isabel. And we can get in touch.
Shout outs for anybody?
Shout outs?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Shout out to Liz Kanapke from the Walla Walla Wine Alliance. That woman is a force. Oh my gosh. She's so
awesome.
much for us. Yeah, she does so much for us as a community, and she's just so exceptional at what she does. Shout out to Heather Bradshaw and Chris Stone at the Washington Wine Commission. Similar note there. They're the ones that make it happen. And the new director, Christina Kelly, who actually came up from Paso Robles, I believe. So she's from California and now spearheading Washington Wine. And then of course, shout out to my friends in the Valley. I think it's spring release comes and goes, but we always spend a lot of time together. Looking forward to celebrate this summer. So we'll all be together then.
awesome.
Bart?
Shout outs.
There's still time to donate. I don't know when this episode's coming out.
It's still, probably still time to donate for Chef Cycle. So that's always welcomed. We had a great show. I mean, we had a great tour. Something up on the coming show that's going to affect us here in Sonoma County. I've been talking to Jen Reichart.
Oh, yeah.
Measure J. Which is essentially was sold to the petitioners as getting rid of factory farming, but in fact, really what it will do if it passes, it will destroy the Sonoma County ag scene. The dairies will be gone.
They're already disappearing as it is.
And so that I'm putting together a panel, and hopefully you guys will back me on this, and we'll do a show here in a couple weeks.
I know Albert Strauss wants in on that too.
Okay, so we'll be talking about that.
Who's the point person on this?
For right now, if you want the information, go to the Sonoma County Farm Bureau.
Okay.
They're the lead on this. A lot of the material isn't coming out because anything having to do with an election, there's time frames. But if you follow Sonoma County Farm Bureau on Instagram, that will be a great place to start, and just get ready because this is really important. And the thing about it is this organization out of Berkeley that's really pushing it, they're not going to stop there. They're going to, if they get it passed in Sonoma, they'll go after every other county, and then eventually they'll come after the wine business. Right. So this is going to be big.
If you care about diverse agricultural community, if you care about local food.
They're talking that like Clover Stornetta would go out of business because of this.
Can we get you guys on the radio station?
Yeah,
talk about this.
It'll be the farming community and frankly the political community of Sonoma County is pretty unified against this. You know, the interesting thing that came from the county supervisors who had to ratify it for the ballot because it had the signatures was, it was with a great deal of reluctance. So they're aware of that it is an existential threat to Sonoma County agriculture, and we will all join forces to fight this and
it's dirty fighting too. I talked to a dairyman by the name of Doug Beretta yesterday, and Doug was telling me that he has this area when he has a sick cow. He has an area that's very easy for them to get in and take care of the cows, and there's people out there with cameras trying to film it, and then it's being sold as this is just the way the animals are treated, when the animals are being kept in this area so that way they can be treated for their sickness. So they're not playing fair. They're breaking onto property.
And who is this out of Berkeley that's pushing this?
It's like an animal rights organization essentially.
Okay.
So anyway, that's
they would rather
thanks
we
for
all
bringing
drink
that up.
Yeah,
seriously.
Almond milk that takes a gallon of water per almond, then support your local dairyman.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
So, and then other than that, come see me at the tank.
Go get tanked with Bart.
Sam.
I don't know. We got all kinds of things going on.
Just read Sam's latest email. It's like 4 pages long of events.
4 pages of events that we're doing this summer. It's insane. This will be, I don't know, we'll have just had our Moon Mountain District event in our first Vinyl Sunday of the year, probably when this show drops.
Yeah,
June 23rd, our first show at the Barn this year. Mark Adams Band, friend of the podcast, winemaker at Ledge, and the Grateful Bluegrass Boys, and this is the news of it all, Chuck Maddow Flavor Train is doing food for that one. Tickets are on sale right now. Go to the website.
And that is such a great place for a show.
Oh, it's the best.
I mean, out in the middle of a vineyard, great modern facility with the barn.
Yeah, it's a great place. We're trying to find more ways to get more stuff out there. We got some dinners coming up. Fairmont, we're teaming up with our friends at Laurel Glen for a great dinner at the Fairmont.
Beach Chalet
all September. We're going to be at Beach Chalet, Lake Chalet, and Gravity Brewing. It's all part of the same restaurant group. We're just we run an events company that makes wine.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said it.
Brian, anything else?
Just want to say I had a great time last night seeing Marty O'Reilly out at Smiley's in Bolinas. Great show. The opening band was amazing. Marty killed it. Got to hang out with his dad and drink some beer and eat some tacos and listen to some live music. Live music is where it's at. I mean,
absolutely.
You can listen to him on YouTube. You can buy the record. You can get the record with your vintage and vinyl here at 16600, but to actually go see Marty play live is just a different thing.
Totally.
Got to feel the soul.
Yeah.
It was amazing. It was great.
Get that bass resonating in your chest.
Devyani, thank you so very much for coming over on a cloudy morning, a Saturday morning. So,
No, pleasure to be here.
what's the rest of your day look like?
Today's pretty relaxed. Just going to do a little bit of tasting, meeting up with a friend for lunch. Tomorrow is my birthday. So.
Happy birthday.
You finally turned 21. You can
Yes,
drink legally.
it's been a ride turning
birthday.
21. No, joking.
Excellent.
But no, tomorrow, just get lunch with another friend of mine who actually lives here in Sonoma, and then probably head to the beach. I think tomorrow's supposed to be pretty sunny.
very
So,
nice.
and then head to dinner at
It won't necessarily be warm, but it'll be sunny.
sunny enough.
Welcome to Sonoma County.
Hey,
No,
it's the
sunny enough.
beach.
Yeah.
Go to Spud Point and get some clam chowder.
Yeah.
Warm yourself back up.
Yeah, but already I'm planning my next trip out to Sonoma because I think this time is definitely more of a Napa focus, but I have gotten a taste of a few things in Sonoma that I definitely need to come back for and do a deeper dive.
Cool.
Well, let us know. We'll send you in some directions.
Yeah.
And get you out in some vineyards.
Yeah.
Yes, most
Yeah.
importantly, I think that's the hard part. Is like for me, I really want to
Get
go
to
and
Rossi
understand a bit of culture.
immediately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. We'll talk to you next week.
Subscribe, review, tell your friends,
Perfect.
but only the cool ones.
Got it.